Chapter 50. John. John opened the door, trying not to slam it against the wall. Amanda turned to him, her face both stunned and confused. The trek back to the Cree compound had mostly been quiet, holding on to each other's hands, but not speaking, both trying to wrestle with what had just happened in the woods.
John, I don't understand why Leah acted the way she did. To say those horrible things, she's not like that.
He went to his wife, scooping her into his arms, cradling her to his chest. The scent of herbal shampoo emanated from her vibrant red locks, and he couldn't resist leaning in to take a deep inhale. John held her close, unwilling to release his hold on his wife, relishing the sensation of her soft curves pressed against him. In his old life, Amanda was a woman he probably wouldn't have given a second glance to. She was not his typical type. He preferred women who were curvier and shared a similar upbringing to him. Who was he kidding? He liked women who were black like him. Amanda was the epitome of paleness, her skin a pure milky white. Her red hair only emphasized the contrast against her almost translucent complexion. Her eyes were light, but not as light as John's. People's reaction to him were nothing new. It was expected, really, with his towering stature and shaved head. But it was his striking gray-blue eyes against his dark complexion that always caught their attention and made them do a double-take. Sure, people of color could have light eyes. John's mother was one of them, and she came from a long line of blue-eyed relatives before her. It was no surprise to his parents when he came out with the same eyes as his mother. In her family, it was the norm. It was no big deal. That was until he joined the army. It wasn't until then that he discovered he had a rare genetic disorder called Waardenburg syndrome. Fortunately, his hearing was fine, or else he wouldn't have been able to join the army, and one thing John wanted more than anything back then was to be a soldier. He loved being a soldier. The army made him the man he was, which led him to Malcolm Gobbo and Amanda. The yin to his yang. It sounded corny even to his own ears, but it was the truth. When he stood for the first time in front of Amanda, the attraction was so strong he felt nearly knocked off his feet. It made no sense. She was the opposite of the kind of woman he would go for, yet she was perfect. Like he'd known her all his life, and was waiting for her to arrive and fill the emptiness of his life that was always there until it wasn't. Malcolm promised he would pick the perfect partner for John, and he did, in more ways than John could ever have imagined.
Well, your friend is confused. If anything, it's the other way around. It's radicals threatening the Cree. She talked as if the world has gone mad, like some type of dystopian novel. That's just ridiculous,
John said, trying to understand what the hell had happened in the woods. He stroked Amanda's hair, letting his fingers run through the silky strands, and wondered for a moment if their baby would inherit her hair. Amanda's tear-streaked face looked up at him, her eyes wide with disbelief that her best friend could be lying to them. He cupped her face with his hands, wishing they'd never bumped into Leah and the man, Kai.
Don't you trust Malcolm?
John asked, bending down to look into her face, hating the doubt he heard in her voice. He loved Amanda more than he could ever imagine he could love anyone. Now that the baby was on the way, his heart was exploding with happiness that he had never experienced. He thought back to life before the Cree and Amanda, a life filled with loneliness, a job he hated, forced to take after the military left him high and dry. At the age of 18, he enlisted in the army and dedicated 15 years to serving his country. The experience molded him into the person he always wanted to be. He'd been an awkward, lanky teenager with peculiar eyes, and often felt like an outsider growing up. His time in the military was cut short by a freak accident, leaving him to pursue a career as a cop. It was the closest he could come to the exhilaration of being a soldier, but it wasn't enough, and left him feeling dissatisfied and unfulfilled. That is, until he met Malcolm Gobbo. From that moment on, his life changed completely.
What do you think is the reason for Malcolm keeping you here? I don't know why I didn't see it before. Why would you be left back? There are plenty of men around, and women, for that matter, who could protect the Cree and keep it safe. Men who are strong but not as trained are out there doing what? Why haven't we questioned what is going on here?
Amanda's words pierced John's ears because he knew there was truth behind them. How come he never questioned it? He knew why. He was happy exactly where he was. He finally had someone in his life, a family of his own. John didn't question the true nature of the decree. He simply believed what he had been told. And if it meant protecting those inside their compound, John was willing to do whatever it took. Everything that mattered to him was inside these walls. He would kill to protect it. Now he was faced with the fact that things weren't adding up. The moment John was handed Amanda as his partner, all things outside of her stopped. His ambitions to move up further in the decree came second to her, and now the child. It made little sense if he stopped and thought about it, but he didn't think about it. Love had completely taken over his mind, leaving no room for anything else.
John?
She spoke, breaking the silence that had become deafening.
You're right. Something doesn't add up.
He sighed, unable to believe the words coming out of his mouth. But listening to Amanda say out loud what they both had ignored, it was hard not to have the rose-colored bubble of their existence shattered. But how could he question Malcolm when the man had given him everything he'd ever wanted in life? It was real, this marriage to Amanda. It wasn't fake like the many relationships he'd had with other women in the past, women he'd hoped he could share a life with, but something was missing. Something was always missing. Amanda was that missing part of his heart. They were John and Amanda Wilder. The words flowed effortlessly from his mouth, as if John and Amanda had always been one entity rather than two individuals, walking separately in the world. Now this amazing woman in his arms was making him a father. John Wilder, the geeky kid who was too tall, too skinny, with weird alien eyes, was not only a husband, but was also going to be a dad. And he owed it all to Malcolm Gobo and the decree. Leah's desperate pleas for Amanda to listen to her cut through John's thoughts like a sharp knife. The graphic images of the young boy's mangled body lying in the middle of the road swirled in his mind, causing confusion and disbelief. How could any of it be true? Then again, look at what happened to Malik. John, like everybody, knew what Malik was capable of. Everyone knew Malcolm's brother was a psycho. He had nothing nice to say about Malik Gobo. He paused, thinking of Malik's wife, Sarah, locked away in her room with their two small sons. Tabitha took the boys out to play in the courtyard each day, depositing them with the mothers of the other children, but no one saw Sarah. It was like she'd disappeared, vanished into thin air. The encounter with Leah and Kai had shattered the facade of security for the carefully constructed walls John and Amanda had built around themselves. The cracks, always present but hidden, were now visible and posed a threat to the comfort they had become accustomed to. John squeezed Amanda tighter to him, feeling a creeping fear for the safety of his wife and their baby.